Welcome back here to X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network. Danny Cahala, Ryan Elke, Anthony Bellino, all joining you. Joining us now from Charlotte, North Carolina, Fox 46. There you can find him on Twitter at Will Kunkel. Fox's name, Will Kunkel, friend of the show. Little did we know that when we had the Panthers play-by-play broadcaster on, he was a Cleveland native, a Bowling Green guy. He and Mike Lissette used to do lunch. He's on your show pretty regularly. This is crazy. 6 degrees of separation under the microscope. Will, my man, how are you? How's life? How are things?
Man, things are busy down here. We already are into this coaching search umbrella, if you will, and it's been a zoo, and it's not even really started yet.
Yeah, it is an absolute zoo. And by the way, you're welcome for gifting you that win. We look totally unprepared to play. Worst game of the season with everything on the line. I still can't believe the Lions coughed that one up there in Charlotte to that team, but neither here nor there. You've been all over this story, Will. What are you hearing about Jim Harbaugh right now in regards to the organization that you cover, the Carolina Panthers?
So Panthers owner David Tepper and Jim Harbaugh have spoke. It's been one conversation at this point. And who knows if there's going to be a second or if it's going to go any further than that. But two things do align. Jim Harbaugh wants to go to the NFL. That we have known for quite a while, and I think it's that desire is as deep as it ever has been. The Panthers have an opening. They also have a desirable team right now because they have draft picks. They have a good young roster on rookie deals. They were 1 win away, or 2 wins away in Week 17 from going to the playoffs and winning their division. It's an easy division. The Broncos division is much tougher with Herbert and Mahomes. So the Panthers' job is a desirable spot to be, but it's a matter if it's the right fit or not. But Jim wants out of Michigan. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. He definitely wants to be back in the NFL.
Oh, hold on now, Will, before you start spewing all this propaganda from down there. And this is why I don't travel to North Carolina, folks. It's not safe down there. All right, first off, how do we know that Jim wants out of Michigan?
He's made it clear. Like, we've talked to people. I've talked to other people that have talked to his people. It's clear that Jim wants an opportunity in the NFL. Again, it doesn't mean he's going to go. He has the ability to sit back, see what jobs open up, see what rosters he likes, and if it's what he wants, then he'll take it if the job is offered. But he wants to try his hand at a Super Bowl one more time.
And you can't knock him for that. I think that's the biggest. When we went through this last year, and he had that conversation where he flew out to Minneapolis and they went through the interview, and everybody who apparently the entire world was there throughout the interview process. Whatever Minnesota decided to do in whatever the I guess the straw that broke the camel's back, they decided not to go with Jim Harbaugh. All of a sudden, everybody was eyewitness to this interview that he just failed. Oh, miserable, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, 13-0, college football playoff, finish the season 13-1, lose to TCU. That one hurt really bad. When you look at, you mentioned desirable roster, right? I don't like the Denver fit just because that division, I'm not saying he's afraid of it. This doesn't seem like a very winnable division right now. I do, however, like the Indy job a little bit. I think that that's a little bit attractive. Carolina with some of your capital, which you alluded to, that makes that somewhat attractive, although quarterback is a giant question mark. And somebody called in this morning and said, what about the Cleveland, or yesterday morning said, what about the Cleveland Browns? I think quarterback in place, roster that's ready to compete, division sort of right for the taking. That would be interesting. Is that really, when you look at the nuts and bolts of this, what makes Carolina maybe the most desirable out of any of the jobs that we know that are available right now, or any job that may become available?
I think so, because head coaches that are coming in, they want to have capital. They want to be able to kind of draft their guys and get their style in the building. And Jim Harbaugh, being a Bo Schembechler guy, loves 2 tight ends. He loves to run the ball. He loves strong defense. That's what the Carolina Panthers are built on. That's what they were when they were really good behind Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, that defense, and obviously Cam Newton on the offensive side. You're right. They got to figure out the quarterback spot, but they have the ability to do that. You look at the Broncos. They don't have any picks. They have Russell Wilson. He's on a monster deal, and it ties up their entire salary cap. So if you go there, they mortgage their future to not be good in the present. You go to the Colts, it's a better situation than the Broncos. But I think it's all about fit with Jim. Jim is a guy that wants to have control of that roster. That's what he wanted in San Francisco. He and Trent Baalke butted heads. So he ultimately decided to leave and head over to Michigan. So I think Scott Fitter is doing a great job as a general manager with the Panthers. I like organization in the organization. I like the owner, then the general manager, and then the head coach. I don't love the idea of the general manager having to answer to the head coach. It throws everything out of whack. We saw that with Matt Rule. It did not work. And by no means is Matt Rule and Jim Harbaugh in the same conversation. Very different. But I don't know that it's a great fit. It doesn't mean it wouldn't work. I just don't know if it's what they're looking for, because this locker room also loves Steve Wilks, the interim head coach.
Very, very peculiar, very interesting. For our listeners, they should know that Will Kunkel, because, the biggest bandwagoner of all bandwagoners, folks, Yankees, 49ers, Duke basketball. I mean, what else? Who am I missing? Who am I missing here, Will?
I'm a fan of you.
Okay, well, that's rightfully so. But you are a Niners fan, and he did have success there in San Francisco. That was a team that wanted to, as you mentioned, they played great defense. You think about some of the great defensive names, guys like Patrick Willis there on the defensive side of the football, Colin Kaepernick at quarterback, outside of all the off-the-field stuff. I mean, it was a team that they won an NFC championship. They got to a Super Bowl. His record was very, very good. I mean, 44-19-1, a winning percentage of 69.5 throughout his 4 years in San Francisco. A short stint as an NFL head coach. It would kind of make sense. Would you want Jim Harbaugh, as someone who is a media member covering the team, would you want Jim Harbaugh there?
Here's what I'll say. Everybody that I've talked to in Michigan has said, if you get them, good luck, because those press conferences are horrible. That's what I'll say. I just want to cover a winner. It's more fun. I don't care if it's Steve Wilks. I don't care if it's you. I don't care if it's Jim Harbaugh or me. I don't care who's coaching the job, as long as it's covering this year was a lot more fun than it was the last 5 years, because come week 10, if they're done, we all know it, and they're not any good. This year we went to week 17. So I don't care who the head coach is. I think Steve Wilks deserves a chance to be a head coach again in the NFL. Whether it's with the Panthers or not, I don't know. But listen, it's going to take a Dame and a guy like Jim Harbaugh to maybe push him out of that position, because he took a team that was 1-4 and he made them relevant in week 17.
Yeah, pretty impressive. And for our listeners in the Glass City, obviously they know Jim Harbaugh, born in the Glass City. For all of our friends there on Fox Sports 1230, tuning in, this is one of our own, right? Hometown guy. We like that kind of stuff. So, how does this affect then? How does this phone call, does it affect at all the hiring restrictions and or rules or guidelines? We reference the Rooney Rule a lot. What does this conversation mean? The fact that, hey, Carolina has picked up the phone and had a phone call. To me, it's perfectly fine. You are entitled to employ whoever you want. We know why the rule is in place the way that it is. A lot of people think that sometimes you just, you bring somebody in, you have a conversation with them just to, I guess, satisfy the Rooney Rule and keep it moving. Is there any backlash? Have you seen anything from people kind of poking their ears out? Because when Jim Irsay said, hey, we hope that Jeff Saturday is the guy, immediately people went to the Rooney Rule and said, well, hey, how are you not going to go through the interview process? What does this phone call mean, if anything, in regards to that?
Well, it doesn't mean anything in the Rooney Rule because Jim is white, so nothing there.
No, you don't
tampering.
Well, you're tampering right now. You're tampering with me.
There's no tampering because he's not employed by the NFL. But I will say, in regards to the Rooney Rule, Steve Wilks being a minority head coach, it does not count as an interview, because you have to interview a minority. You have to interview somebody that's a minority that is not in the franchise already. So Steve Wilks could lose out potentially to another minority head coach, because you have to interview another minority head coach that is not on your payroll already. So that's why, this process hasn't even really started, honestly. We haven't even gotten there. The Panthers are going to get this thing rolling once the season is over, which is next Sunday after they play the Saints. So after that, then we'll start seeing names come in for interviews.
Now, this is off of this topic, but I did, because you cover the NFL. You know what it's like. You're having conversations with guys in the locker room there for Fox 46. The Damar Hamlin situation from Monday Night Football. It's something like a lot of us have not seen. I mean, you could turn back the clock. We've had a situation like this with Chuck Hughes with the Detroit Lions years and years and years ago at Tiger Stadium, where heart attack and death ensued. Now, for the game that is last night, like I said, a lot of our first experience with a situation like this, where a guy makes a normal tackle, stands up, and then all of a sudden, boom, is down on the ground. I don't know. I felt like a lot of people were really, really quick to jump all over the NFL and just say, hey, you guys got to cancel this immediately, where we're trying to figure out and digest what's happening in real time while there really isn't any information. I don't cast a shadow over Roger Goodell and the NFL. I don't throw a stone at them for taking a moment to try to digest what's happening and then figure out what the right course of action is.
I don't either. And I think the people that are the ones that want to virtue signal and show the world how good they think they are. Like, listen, what's it matter if the NFL waits 10 minutes? What's it matter if they wait another 20 minutes? As long as they come to the right decision, it doesn't matter. There's a protocol when there's an injured player, they have to be carted off the field, that you have 5 minutes to warm up and the game will resume. So that protocol was implemented immediately. And once they realized this was not a torn ACL, this was not a head injury, I say that as if that's not serious. It is. But the point is, once they realized this was extremely serious and a life was potentially on the line, they altered those plans and got to the right decision. They're making this call at the headquarters. They're not making the call on the field in that circle where those compressions are being done. So you need to just stop. You need to relax and realize the right decision was made. And whether it took 10 more minutes or 20 more minutes, like, stop being that guy and just realize we got to the right spot and pray for DeMar, because that was terrifying last night.
Yeah, a scary, scary situation. And I think that the other thing that I saw a lot last night, on Twitter, you work at television, I work at television. I thought, just, from a 30,000-foot view here, I thought they put Susie, Adam, and Booger on an island. It was like, hey, let's go away from the broadcast booth. Let's go to the studio. And it's like, okay, I understand that when you work in television, this is why you make your money, right? They don't pay you to read off the prompter. Most circus clowns can do that. But it's, how do you handle an adverse situation, or when something doesn't work, when technology fails, when there is some sort of event like this and you're forced to move on the fly? I thought the network did a bad job. I thought they did a disservice. Going back to the booth with Joe Buck, like, let's cut to NFL primetime and show some highlights. If you're watching the game, you know what's at stake, you know what's happening, you know it's serious. Why are we going back to the studio to ask three people that aren't there anything? Like, they don't have any answers. What are we doing?
Well, the problem was no one had any answers. What do you think the alternative is? Because you got to keep everyone live up to date. You don't know when something is going to come down to you. You have no idea because you don't even know what's happening. So you have Joe and Troy that can talk on this for about 10, 15 minutes before they start regurgitating anything and everything. So then you go back to studio and you have Susie just kind of play traffic cop there and have Adam talk about his angle. You have Booger talk about his angle. And then, unfortunately, again, in about 25 minutes, you start regurgitating and repeating yourself because you don't have anything, but you also don't know when anything is going to come. So I thought they did a great job. I don't know what the answer is. What do you do in a situation you've never been in and you may have just watched, a life-altering moment happen on the field like that?
Yeah, no doubt. I was just, I felt bad for him. I mean, they were all trying to, they cut back to Joe Buck in the booth, and it's like, rough.
I feel for them in that situation from the standpoint that they don't have answers. But like you said, that's why you get paid to be in that moment, because you can keep it on the rails. You can keep it respectful. You can keep it clean. You don't speculate. You don't go all hot take. You keep it, you keep it where it needs to be, because there's a lot of people that wouldn't do that. It's like the horrible, it's like being a corner. You're out on an island. You're one-on-one. It's pissed to that. Like, they're on an island. You're right. But that's what they get paid to do, and I thought they did it well. I don't know what the alternative would have been, because you can't cut to different programming and act like it's not happening, because then everybody wants to know what's happening.
Right, yeah, I wasn't, for me, I was like, yo, if you got primetime queued up, throw the red bar at the bottom. Hey, we stepped away. This is what's taking place. Here's some highlights, and just, everybody take a deep breath, take a step back, buy us 10 minutes of real time, and figure it out from there. Speaking of figuring it out, the NFL has some figuring out to do. They announced yesterday in a statement, Roger Goodell informed the teams that the game would not be resumed this week after consulting with both franchises and the Players Association. The league, however, has not made a decision on resuming the game at a later date. Do you just toss this one up to a no contest? Do you rule it as a tie? What say you, Will Kunkel, if you were in the commissioner's chair? How do you handle this? Because we know that there is playoff seeding and implications here. That game, it was important. It mattered a whole lot, and then all of a sudden, it didn't matter at all.
Yeah, as of now, it sounds like the Bills and the Bengals are going to be playing their regular games of Week 18. So presumably, once they do that, they can finish this game a week later. Maybe you make an adjustment to the playoff schedule. I don't know the answer, but I think you have to play it, right? And unfortunately, somebody's going to have to just say, here's the decision. This is what we are doing. And I think the players are fully aware that kind of once this dust settles, business as usual, for lack of a better term, will ensue, and the game will probably be played because, like you said, there's too much on the line, and it doesn't mean that it matters more than smart life. It doesn't, but at some point, you just kind of got to go back to what you got to do.
Have you had the opportunity to speak with any players or coaches? What's kind of been, if you have, what has been sort of the word from them? Because then, everybody starts looking at themselves in the mirror and go, well, I mean, I guess that could have been me.
Yeah, I haven't talked to anybody yet because today is the Panthers off day. We will get in once we get into that locker room. Then that's going to obviously be a heavy talking point, and it's scary. Like it's not a place that you expect to see something like that. It's interesting. My wife is an ICU nurse, and we were watching the game together. She was hardly taken aback. She's in the ICU every day, and that's what happens every day. And I said, yes, you're right, but when you watch football, you don't expect to see that, and it's so jarring. It's like if you're walking down the street and you see someone just collapse, it's jarring. When you go to the hospital, you're expecting to see that stuff. You don't expect the strongest, youngest, most healthiest population in the world to all of a sudden go through something like that, and that's why I think it was so jarring. It was on Monday Night Football. The whole world is watching, and I mean, it was intense, and I think I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the first responders. Not only did they respond, I mean, they got there, got his heart going again, and performed under 30, however many people are at that stadium, 60,000 people, and then another 20 million watching. If one of them froze, one of them didn't do their job, his heart's not started, but that's it.
Amen. Yeah, talk about working under pressure. I mean, that's next level stuff. And they went out there, and that's the job. That's what they signed up to do. And it doesn't always work out like that, because at the end of the day, it's still human nature. And those people rose the occasion. They got the job done, and they were at least able to get his heart going, get him to the hospital where they could further the care, which is most important. His name is Will Kunkel. You can find him on Twitter and follow this propaganda machine of Jim Harbaugh to Carolina by just simply log on to the Twitterverse and throw Will a follow. You know that you want to. You can find him there at Will Kunkel Fox. Will, my friend, is always partner. Thank you so much for the time. We greatly appreciate it, my man.
And I love you, bro.